welcome to Vibrato Part 2. Okay, so we're going to review what we covered in Vibrato Part 1. So Ed, tell us how you would check if you think a student is ready to start learning vibrato.
Check if they're ready to start learning vibrato. Well, I would check that the left hand position, it hasn't got grip, it's not too tense, it has the ability to move, and the whole posture, everything. If you have a mobile arm that you need, flexible ability for the vibrato, nothing else could be affected by the movement.
Excellent, perfect answer. Mimi, something else that you could check they've done before you start doing vibrato?
Shifting.
Excellent. Why?
Because they need to be able to, the sort of concept of the if you're doing arm vibrato, that is,
Yeah.
of the whole, the hand working as one unit.
Good.
The hand and arm moving
Yeah.
together with the thumb.
And why is being able to shift first helpful for learning arm vibrato?
Because I don't teach arm vibrato, I'll be honest.
That's fine.
I suppose it's because the whole it's one movement. I mean, if you're shifting, you're not going to you're not going to move the wrist at all. You don't. So you need the as I said the hand and the fingers and the arm to be moving together, but without any tension.
Good. So to be really clear, shifting relates to arm vibrato in what way? Just the if you were talking to someone who didn't play violin.
Yeah. So if you're doing arm vibrato the way you teach it, then you would shifting is a very similar action. So you start off with if you're the beginnings of the arm vibrato, you start with an action which is almost identical to shifting.
Exactly.
And then you basically make the action much smaller and then gradually build speed.
Great. Yeah, perfect. It's the same movement, so it's the same muscles, so you're training the muscles you've already started to train to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Whereas wrist vibrato is different and I think can be confusing, not only intellectually but for the, I think sometimes if you teach, I've tried teaching wrist vibrato first and I just found that I got a very wiggly waterfall when they weren't doing vibrato, and that the vibrato also wasn't good, and I just felt like it was too much all at once, whereas my kids have really good arm vibrato, and I think part of that is because they do 2 years of learning how to shift properly and then they do vibrato, and this has always been stable for them, and then later on, once that's all consolidated, we start to loosen up the wrist for different things. Good. Joe, what's the first exercise or set of exercises you're going to introduce in that lesson where you're like, right, let's start vibrato, and they're super excited?
I'll get the violin in banjo position and get them to push the string that way so that they can feel the action, and then get it to put it on their shoulder, and maybe if they need to grip the violin here, and to continue that motion.
Good.
Ghosting on the string, gliding up the string, pushing up the string.
Polishing. Good.
And checking.
What do you think would make the difference between whether they should need to hold it here or not?
How connected their chin is to the violin, and also how free their shoulders are.
And a very
if
mechanical.
they're sticky, if they're gripping too hard with their hand, it will probably pull the violin out of that place.
Yeah, so then is the answer to get them to hold it here? Or is the answer to stop them being too sticky?
Stop them being too sticky.
Yes, okay, so in what circumstance would you want them not to be able to, even in a perfect world, any of you, to do large amounts of exercises without an extra support for the violin here?
Sorry, could you say it again?
Sorry, that was my fault. So,
My brain halfway through that.
Yes. What would be the difference between a child or a student that you would, for example, polishing, say, okay, you can do 300 polishes like this, no problem, let's just do it, and someone that you would say, okay, just give yourself a little bit of extra help, let's do 300 like this.
But they're not going to play that, are they?
Ooh, full-size violins.
Yeah.
Full-size violins are heavier comparison to young kid. Like if a 13-year-old's just gone into a full size, they're probably not going to have the weight to like violin ratio of being able to hold it comfortably with the head. So if you ask them to do lots of exercises that are just like this, they're going to end up like working here rather than resting here. Whereas if you've got an 8-year-old on a quarter size, just like a feather. So just be aware that as the violins get bigger, especially when they just go onto them and they're small, they're going to need different kind of supports. You know, like when you start the tiny ones, they're just holding the violin the quarter or 8th or 10th or 16th size just with the head, and then by the time you get to teaching full size, you would be teaching a distribution of weight, mostly here, but partly there, you know, there is some support coming from that cradling in the left hand. Is that a new idea that would change as the children grow up?
No, I haven't really thought about the violin being heavier, but of course it's obvious, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, no, it's not obvious.
Well,
It's true.
It seems obvious, but once you've said it,
Just in the same way that if you play, you know, for hours, like you can experiment next time you practice. If you play just with your head, you will feel that there's tension here.
Yeah.
And if you play without your head, you will definitely feel tension here. And so it's about that give and take.
Yeah, or maybe get into it in small batches or smaller batches and shake it out and then come back.
Exactly. Good. Okay, so the exercises we talked about last time are air violin, nearly the elephant on the wall, polishing, which Joe's already talked about, left hand pizzicato to check mobile elbow and no gripping, and supporting here definitely for all sizes of violin because you're going to take the front of the hand away, so they can't, you know, that really does need some support. Knocking the E peg and making sure that that thumb joint is opening and closing. And for some children, this will also be a good exercise to do. It's like get right across yourself like your violin, hold your thumb, and can you open and close that joint? Because that's quite a weird new thing, this joint changing.
Yeah, that would be the difference from going from this, the shifting arm
Exactly.
movement, having actually a stable, stationary thumb with keeping everything else.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly like that. Yeah. Okay. Because, like as Ed said, but quite quickly, so I'll just go a bit slower. This is everything moving at once, right? And actually when you do vibrato, we keep the thumb still. So you're opening and closing here, which we're going to talk more about now. Not like that, no. Like the Queen. So that's why this is a really important step. Don't miss that step out. Because it is different. And some children will need the holding the thumb step in between as well.
The banjo part of what Joe was saying earlier on was pretty good for the thumb. Stay stationary, just having that weight, but the propulsion of the arm.
To stay stationary.
Stay stationary, and then you feel that the arm, the hand can move up and down.
I would, Joe, when you do this one, do you keep the thumb still, or you're just practicing?
I do both.
Okay, I don't do this at all, I have to say.
If I keep the thumb still.
What do you feel is the benefit to doing it here to doing it here?
If I keep the thumb still, start off like that and then bring the hand closer. But it just gets a concept of the thumb waggling, your hand waggling and your thumb staying in the same place. It's just a subtle feeling in that, how the thumb tip responds.
I think that's true, and I think the other thing about this is that you can see it. That's really, but I have to say that I don't teach this. I might try it next time I'm teaching.
Because even locking the E peg like this, so you can kind of see it.
Yeah. I mean, most of my kids are fine going straight to that.
I had a problem with my thumb, because I think every week we've done it, I've said thumb this, thumb that, what height, what this, what that, and actually having a moment where you can just kind of see it
Yeah.
and feel what
Yeah,
happens to the
I
bone.
think the sight of it is
Yeah.
really helpful, especially for visual learners, of course, yeah. And then we've got the finger gym
Yeah.
thing that we did. Have you got your list from last time? Have I forgotten any that we covered on?
We just got to the finger gym. So we did the 100 polishes, against the wall, left hand pits, knocking E-peg, and we just started to do the finger gym and stuff.
Good, great. So, one of the things that I found very useful from Maisie Ferguson, thank you Maisie, was that I used to really obsess about the thumb not coming with them when they first start to actually do vibrato. Like I was very worried if this was happening, rather than that.
Okay.
And she said, just don't worry about it. Like, so what I want is this,
Right.
and what I was sometimes getting was this, and I was
okay.
worried about that. And she
Right.
said, just don't worry about it, like, it'll come.
Oh.
And yeah, it has. So I think that that's really helpful. Okay, so then the next set of exercises that I would encourage them to do are called tornadoes. And we do them without the bow first. So do you want to just grab your violins and I'll give you time to write after.
And those?
Not right now, just violins for now, but you need both near.
Don't even need to tune.
Okay, so violins up. Obviously with the student you would then check that there's not, you know, any funny things happening there. 3 on A string like a harmonic. And we're going to just do some regular polishing. And then you're going to turn it into a tornado, so you're going to make it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And at the end you're just going to see if you can get a tiny bit of arm vibrato before it starts to all go mad in the wrist. Okay, so polish, 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 tornado, and just see, can you get a few bits at the end that are not going weird? And they will go weird really quickly for the students. So we do like a week of that alongside whichever other ones they're still doing. And then once we add the bow to that, this is the bit they really like and parents mostly don't like so much because it sounds awful. Grab your bows, please. One bit I forgot to say. Is that in the early stages, so like in the polishing, etc. stage, I very highly recommend that you get your students to start doing this, because what will happen is that and they'll be like, oh my god, I can't do it. So you know, just like and make sure that they're not doing this. Yeah, that can you stabilise that left wrist? So this is kind of alongside the first week of exercises, maybe the second. And can they do 10 slow down ups? Without that. It's a really good one. Okay, so back to tornadoes. So we've done silent tornadoes. And you know, some of them might not really know what a tornado is, so you have to just either show them on YouTube or explain them.
Got a sink, got a puck hole.
Yeah, exactly. And then what happens when we play it is 1 down bow, slow, so it's 3 slow bows, I'll demonstrate. And we just do one of like a little harmonic siren. Big, right? So between first and third position. And then the second bow is getting smaller. And then by the time we get to the third bow, they see if they can do 1 bow of real vibrato. Start to get smaller and drop the finger. 1 bow. So what you really don't want to do with the students is, you've done it for a millisecond, so let's see if you can do it for 5 bows. right? You want to say to them, this is just a tiny bit at the end. We're not going to try and make it bigger, because you're training the muscles. Just because you can do it, you know, your 3 C's, you're at cooperation, you need to get to consolidation. Don't try and mix those two up. Like as soon as you get to the second step, you're going on to the third step. You've got to just sit on cooperation for a bit. Right, can I get my fingers to do this 10 times each practice? Just for one bow at the end of the tornado. And then the week after we can start to try and extend it if it's going well. Yeah?
Yeah.
Because what will happen is you'll get this. Hopefully you'll get this. You might get this, and then you'll get... And if you're doing as much wrong as you are right, then you're confusing the brain, right? The brain doesn't understand automatically which one you want. They will reproduce what they have done the most. So you want to make sure that what they're doing, what the brain is doing the most, is the right thing. Good. Okay, so then on a separate note, so at the same time as that, bows down please. If everything else, this is not like, you know, my 4-week schedule. This is obviously just while they're at the point at which they can do it and they've done the right number of repetitions, they're ready to go on. Some kids will do 2 weeks of the same exercises, some kids will do 4 weeks of the same exercises, some kids will do 3 days and then move themselves on. You know, so one of the things that I think is really, really helpful and that I haven't seen anyone else describe in the same way is to try and put the focus point on the base of the first finger, not on the tip of the finger. So what I'm talking about is this is the special polishing part, and what I want you to do is practice opening and closing your hand so that the first finger goes back to the nut and back up to first position. Really super slowly, we're not making any sound. The third finger is dropped, so it's just opening and closing, but instead of them thinking about this, which ends up with a lot of this kind of stuff happening, you're just thinking, right, can you use these muscles, give their bicep and tricep a big poke? Can you open, just slide, polish the base of the first finger down a bit, can you bring it up? And the benefits of putting the focus on here is that if this happens, everybody realises. Often you end up, you know, I've seen a lot of teachers who've got students who've got a lovely vibrato like this. Sounds great. And then as soon as you actually try and fix the waterfall, it all goes mad because they've actually trained the hand in the wrong position. So the first finger joint slipping underneath is really common. The first finger joint coming away is really common, and then you get instant results that sound terrible, like a heart attack. So I think it's really, really helpful to have, like, this is the bit you're going to think about. Draw a happy face on there, depends what age the kid is, you know.
And you're focusing on polishing the side of the neck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So literally, if you imagine, well, let's not imagine, let's draw it. Oh, that's yours, Joan.
Thank you.
Don't let me steal it by accident.
I've got other colours if you want.
No, thank you. Put the eyes are where you're thinking about. Oh, I should give myself one. Camera. Okay, so you can draw a little happy face like that. And the happy face is going to think about polishing very lightly, giving a little stroke to the side of the neck.
Let's do one of these.
And that's
Okay.
with the other 2 contact points staying where they are, thumb and...
Yeah, although I am trying not to worry so much about the thumb, and it has saved me. But certainly the third finger, you don't want, you know, you're not practicing a mini polish, you do want rolling. Yeah. So once they can do that silently, then I do have a set kind of, let's write stuff down actually rather than playing, and then we'll put it through in a minute. So you want to write up air vibrato, sorry.
So that was,
This.
yeah.
I recommend 10 slow down ups, so 20 bows. sorry. And then tornadoes with no bow. Just see if you can get a moment of arm vibrato that is not messed up at the end. And then the 3 bow version of a tornado, which I will just show you one more time.
So the tornado is, yes,
Getting smaller, 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 drop. See if you can drop your finger onto the string, and then with the bow, one bow proper polishing, one bow polishing getting smaller, and one bow doing slow, regular vibrato. And then the happy face on the base of the first finger, joint, and seeing if you can get that happening.
So is that one again?
Happy face on the base of the first finger joint. Polishing gently the side of the neck. As slowly as it needs to be to make sure that nothing else is waggling about that shouldn't be.
So you're supposed to be knocking the peg when you do that?
No.
What's that? Tornadoes? What's that happy?
Happy face at the base of the
Oh.
finger joint.
And allow the top joint to roll.
The third finger
Or the third
needs
finger.
to roll. Don't let it slide. It's not a small polish, it's an opening and closing of the hand and the elbow. Okay?
So putting the focus on that base joint allows you to stabilise the whole hand, right? Just to get it in your head that actually that guidance is going to be there for the whole motion.
Yeah, it's the best way that I've found to enable one check, making sure everything's working. Rather than, like, if you're checking that the top joint of the finger is opening and closing, then you can still end up doing this. If you're checking that the thumb is still blah blah blah, whereas that's the thing that I think you can't get this right and not have everything else right as well. Because if the finger is tight and it's not moving, then the joint can't move. I mean, unless, like, you can see that that's coming from the first finger, not from the arm. And if you're doing this and you're not worrying about the thumb, then that doesn't matter. And if it's come away, you can see, and if it's come under, you can see.
Yeah.
So it's like the kind of core of the hand
Yeah.
for vibrato. So once they've got that really good, then we go to having the bow, and this is just a set of gradually getting faster exercises. So for most kids by this point, they will still be practicing tornadoes, but they won't be doing the other exercises. Quite a lot of students continue to do this one for a while because it's quite difficult for them to isolate and relax the thumb joint. But they're not also doing, I mean, some of them are if they've got sort of weak wrists that waggle really easily. But you know, in most cases by this point, they're just doing the E string peg knocks and the tornadoes, and then this exercise. So I just always use A3 for ages. And so we're practicing, first of all, walking slowly. So walking slowly, walking slowly. It sounds horrible, I apologise. So they're starting in normal playing position, and then they're extending back. There's all sorts of debate about vibrato and how it works at the very uppermost level, whether the curve would be like whether the note you hear is in the middle or whether you go above and back to the note or whether you go underneath and back to the note. I think this is what I found works for my students at this point. So that's 1, 2, 3. So each repetition we're counting like 2 slow bows, and they've got 4, like 2 complete cycles, 4 wiggles, 1 open, 1 closed within each bow. So they do that for a week. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they would practice all their tornadoes, their E-peg knocks, etc., and then this would be the practice on this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I would set them a little shake after 5, and then they do that again, and that would be their vibrato practice for that day. So walking slowly. Surprise, surprise, walking faster.
That's called walking slowly, is it?
Yeah. So walking slowly, walking slowly. And walking faster, slightly in this, pretty much the same, but tiny bit faster. Walking faster, walking faster, walking faster, walking faster. Jogging slowly. Still 4 notes in each bow. I know it's not quite C sharp, but C, what's it called? C, what's a sharp and a half called?
I don't know.
Sharp and half.
Microtone.
Oh,
It must have a name. YouTube, tell us the name, put it in the comments if you know it, please. Demonstrate my own ignorance.
shut up.
Right, and then jogging faster is the last one with 4 in each bow. So let's get technical. Walking slowly, I would say if you give each microtone a metronome marking that we're talking about 100 for walking slowly, about 108 for walking faster.
108.
Yeah. About 100, let me see. No, that's really slow. Ignore me, I'm talking rubbish. Okay, walking slowly, sorry, I apologise. Walking slowly, I would say is 132. So that's per sound, not per pair. Although it would be obvious if you try and do it the other way, it suddenly won't work. Walking faster, about 144.
So jogging
Jogging slowly, about 177. Jogging faster, about 194. Then we do our twinkle variations and we do fatter than a caterpillar. And that is when you double the number of wobbles in each bow. So up until jogging faster, you've done quite fast bows, yeah? And then once we do fatter than a caterpillar, we're doing 8 wobbles in a bow, not 4. and then, you know, I don't set them the metronome markings, otherwise I would know what they were, so this is for you. But basically, once they can do nearly fatter than a caterpillar, I think there's probably normally about 3 weeks of making it vaguely faster each time. And then they've got a slow vibrato. So you can still sort of hear fatter than a caterpillar. Basically, by the time you can't keep track of where the fatter than a caterpillar is, you're on slow vibrato. At that point, we tend to have a break. We're then just continuing with that. We're not having a break from vibrato, but we're having a break from progression. So they're just practicing their fatter than caterpillars on A3 and starting to put them on long bows, long notes in pieces, like maybe we'll just do Twinkle, where the last note in G major, they're going to put some vibrato on it. They might start doing vibrato on the third fingers in tonalization. You know, the last note of lots of their review pieces, they can try some vibrato on. Some kids find it really difficult to turn on just for one note within a piece. Other kids find that really easy. It's just, you know, personal aptitude. And so we tend to just sit on having the long threes with some vibrato, even if it's wobbly and it doesn't sound great yet, for a few weeks. Unless they're super keen, like sometimes, you know, you get those super keen kids who are like, I want to do it on other fingers, or they come back and they're like, look, I can do vibrato on 4 and 1 and 2. And so those are not the kids that you need to have a plan for, because they'll just take care of themselves a lot of the time. You just need to make sure you're teaching them the right things in the right order. But the ones who find it difficult and are like, oh my God, that was really hard. At Suzuki Hub we have a vibrato certificate, which I think is a really nice thing, that they can come and say to Marcia, can I have my vibrato certificate? My teacher says I've done it. And, you know, make a big song and dance of giving it to them, that they've learned vibrato. And mine get that the first time they can put it into a piece, even if it's on the last note and it sounds, you know, it's not like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not refined vibrato, it's just the beginnings of it. So at that point then we would start, when they feel ready to start doing more, we'll put vibrato into tonalization, because it covers every finger, they know it really well, they can play it very, very slowly, it's just over 3 strings. You can practice it in C major as well, so it's on the G string. I tend not to have huge problems moving from being able to do it on A3 to everything else. You know, if you do, then you just need to work out how much to go back and do again. You know, if a child has a problem, suddenly has a massive problem doing it on D3 rather than A3, Joe, what have you not checked properly?
Elbow position.
Elbow position, good. And Ed?
D3 rather than A3, elbow position, clinch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, if you hit a wall, you just need to be the doctor and identify the illness and go back and find what prescription you need to give them for it. I mean, that's basically our whole musical job, isn't it? Not whole. That's what we need to be able to do in all situations.
With that whole section of the getting faster exercises, if you're going with 1 week and just pushing it and getting a bit faster.
Sometimes 2 weeks.
You kind of alluded to it anyway, but that thing of...
Sorry, love, I can't actually hear you.
Bearing in mind a lot of students, kids are all learning roughly around about the same time, so if they're all learning vibrato at different times, or they're amongst peers that are doing vibrato and they want to show off and leap ahead and try to do lots of things, and they come back and they're trying to mimic other sounds rather than the exercise that you're setting. What do you do about that? It's what they're listening for.
The words.
Just
Talking
the words.
faster or
It's
faster than a
just
caterpillar.
listen to those words. So it's not
And I
about creating the sound that they might hear other people doing it roughly slightly more advanced stage. Or
No, I think you can say to them, look, I really love that you want, and what often happens is that it's the children who haven't started vibrato who start to try and do it, and they end up with loads of weird stuff.
Yeah.
And you can say to them, I'm delighted that you're trying to do vibrato, but I've got to teach it to you in a really careful way, and then you can explain to them why they're not ready yet. So if they're not ready, you can say, okay, the reason, what we need to fix in order for you to be ready to do it is that your left thumb is gripping, for example. So I'm going to give you these exercises. Name a great exercise for grippy left thumb, please.
Fingers down.
Yeah. Good.
Tapping.
Excellent. Another one, Ed?
belly taps.
Yeah, brilliant. Another one? A piece?
Like you know with thumb polishes.
Yeah, can do.
I think
Twinkle
that,
theme.
High five.
that harmonic allegro. I think
Yeah, all of the shifting pieces will really help.
Anything.
And also high five twinkle, which is if you every time I have an open string, it's like a very gentle high five, not just because of your wrist. Can you just turn the computer this way, please? So you just touch their hand like a gentle high five, thank you. Every time they've got open strings, and it just means they're practicing many times. It's like the tummy taps, but it's more musical and slightly more difficult. Thank you. Good, so I would say to them, if you have a student who is, trying to do some vibrato because they're really keen, I would say to them, this is what we need to do before you can do that. You may realise that means that they've got some work to do on their head, they've got some work to do on their left hand, and you can make them a list and say, okay, let's put in the middle of your, the beginning of your book, probably 3, let's make a list. Right, we've got to fix the head. When we fix the head, we've got to fix the left thumb. When we fix the left thumb, we can do vibrato. It's up to you how much time and energy you spend on those things, what it's going to take. It might be 6 months, it might be 6 weeks, it might be 1 week. If it's 1 week, they really haven't been paying attention before. But, I think give them the pathway to that. But in terms of the kids being in group and trying to find a better way to do it before they're ready, they realise when it goes wrong. Because it's so technical, and you can say to them, this is like the training for the marathon. This is not the wonderful running through London with all the crowds cheering you on. This is the gritty in the gym and 6 a.m. running next to the canal and it's pouring with rain bit, and then you'll get to the glory bit.
Don't want to talk about that. No idea.
So if you've got a kid practicing for half an hour, how much of that half an hour when you're starting to teach them vibrato, and you say, I will say, look, this is a long project. It takes a long time to ripen this skill, but if they don't do the exercises, they're not going to get vibrato.
Yeah.
So how much of that half an hour, say, would you say they need to use for vibrato?
Oh, I think it takes about 3 minutes to do the exercises that I'm
You'd say
setting.
3 minutes, would you?
So Nelly the elephant runs through knocking on the wall, 100 polishes, and some tornadoes. Maybe 4 minutes.
Let's say 4 minutes.
I think it's definitely under 5 minutes.
Right.
And what I say to them also, if you've got a sporadic practicer, like either because they're doing lots of other stuff, like we've got orchestra till 7 on Wednesday, and then we've got group till 7 on Thursday, and then Friday nights I see my friends that actually only practice Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Teenagers, there's quite a lot of that, and obviously you don't know unless you really ask about practice. But if you do have them, I would say to them, look, if you can find those 3 minutes every morning to do your vibrato practice, you're going to get it much more quickly. I don't mind, or maybe you do mind, and you have a conversation about their practicing. But if that practice pattern is working out generally, this is going to undo it. It's very difficult to do the vibrato without the exercises being at least every other day. So if you've got a big chunk of time, it's worth saying to them, please, will you just try and find 5 minutes to do just these exercises. Don't think of it like practice, think of it like it's separate. Like we have breakfast, then you do your vibrato exercises, then you brush your teeth and go to school. Because if you do it for half the week and then you stop for half the week, even if you're still playing the violin but you're not doing those exercises, then it's really difficult to build a muscle control. So in my recipe, we've got to the stage where they can do a slow vibrato, it doesn't sound great, and they're putting it into some pieces, maybe only on 3, maybe on other fingers as well. We start to introduce it into tonalisation, and basically I'm kind of led by them. If they're, you know, I'll say to them, do you feel ready to do another chunk of work on vibrato to get it really good on other fingers as well, and start to make it sound more like vibrato? And some of them will say, oh, I can't bear it, I feel like we've been doing vibrato for a year. And you say, okay, let's have another term off and do it later, it doesn't matter. Once you've got to the stage where you've got a vibrato, you can pause there for, I think, as long as you need. And then, but you know, so whenever they're ready, we'll then go back to doing fatter than caterpillar, and we'll try and vary that. So they might do 10 down-ups of slow fatter than a caterpillar, 10 down-ups of fast fatter than a caterpillar, on, you know, 2 fingers or all of the fingers. It depends how much time they want to spend on it. But so you're taking it out as an exercise. It's not just in the pieces again. It's a repetition box, and you're refining the skill. Different strings, different fingers, different positions really help some kids. Not higher than 3rd. You know, maybe doing a scale. There's a book called Viva Vibrato, which I think can be really helpful.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's most of the same exercises that we've just been talking about, but for some kids it's really good for them to have a book they can collect stickers in and they can work through, and they feel like, yes, I'm getting near the end of the book, whereas a bunch of exercises can feel quite nebulous. Whereas for other kids, they're like, I can feel that I sometimes have a really great vibrato, and that's enough. So it's just individual to the children.
I sometimes feel like that as well.
Me too.
Yeah. Sometimes.
And then much later on, so we're mostly talking about book 3 students now, maybe book 4 for the sort of second round of exercises and refinement. And then much later, like book 6, I would then come back to it and be talking about, okay, what review pieces can we do, what scales can we do, how can you practice your vibrato, so that we are getting a whole colour palette of different vibratos, thinking about different widths, thinking about different speeds, wrist versus arm. But that's not, for me, that's not a book 4, book 3, 4 kind of exercise. That's like later. Done. Any questions? Do you feel better about all that now? Feel like something you can take away and sort of think about?
Yeah. I think that Viva Vibrato bit, I've got that. I think it has some good names for the exercises, which are quite fun.
Yeah.
Things like, it's American, must be American, that book. Is it American?
Must be.
Must be.
Why? Because it's fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just kind of like really cool names for exercises.
Yeah, Brits can't do cool names, can they?
Yeah, well, no, it's just, you know, it looks American.
I don't know if it's American, but I do think it's good. And there are probably other books that are just as good that I haven't come across. But you know, when you find something that works. But I mean, the vast majority of my kids go through this within a term, and they don't need a book, and they don't, you know, it's not a big stress. They just really enjoy it, and then they've got great vibrato. And then occasionally there are kids who really find it tricky, and we struggle and get through in the end. Any questions? Good. Excellent. Okay. So